Aloha and welcome back to the garden. I'm Miss Amber and I'm excited for you to be here today. If you were with us last class, you might remember talking about food webs and all the living things or organisms inside of our soil. Do you remember what the soil food web producers are? Plants. They produce their own food using energy from the sun. Nice job. You might have noticed by now that plants and soil have a really important relationship. Soil isn't just where plants grow. Plants get their nutrients and water from the soil, and soil gets those nutrients back from the plants at the end of the plant's life cycle. Plants also help protect soil from drying out in the sun or washing away in the rain because the roots actually hold all of the soil together. So today we're going to talk about the importance of soil all over the planet, not just in our gardens, because soil is found on land all over the earth. Planet Earth is big, and it's been around for a long time, but has it always looked the same, or has it changed over time? The Earth is constantly shifting and changing in many, many ways. Have you ever felt an earthquake or learned about glaciers that carve out huge valleys, or about volcanoes like the ones that we live on that pour out lava creating new land, or watched the waves on the beach wash away sand and rocks? All of these are ways that the earth is constantly changing and shifting around us. These processes are called weathering and erosion. And you may remember hearing those words in our very first lesson on soil. Weathering and erosion are the processes that help break down rocks into smaller and smaller pieces called minerals that we find in our soil. But weathering and erosion can have other effects on our soil as well, and that's what we're going to be talking about today. To start, we're going to do an activity that's going to help us better understand the land on planet Earth using an apple. And I want you to imagine that this apple is our planet Earth. I'm going to divide our Earth into quarters. If I divide it into quarters, how many pieces am I going to have? 4. So these 3 pieces represent all of the water on planet Earth. So think about all of the oceans and lakes and rivers and ice. All of that is these 3 pieces. And this one piece represents all of the land on planet Earth. So all of the mountains and valleys and cities and towns, all on this piece of land. So 3/4 of our planet, or 75%, is water, and 1/4, or 25%, is land. Let's look at our land. Now, all of the people live on this piece of land. You and me and all of the plants and animals. But do people live everywhere on the planet where there's land? For example, it's hard for people to live in places like a really hot, sunny desert where there's no water. Can you think of other places that it would be hard for people to live? Maybe some places that are too icy and cold, or the sides of steep mountains, or mountaintops themselves. Those would be hard places for people to live. So I'm going to cut our little piece of Earth's land in half, and this half of our land is inhospitable to humans, which means it's hard for humans to live there. Places that are, the steep sides of mountains, or icy and cold like the Arctic, or hot and dry like the desert. So inhospitable to people. So that leaves 1/4. So this piece of land is all of the places where people can live. And this is half of 1/4 of the Earth. Now, what is half of 1/4? 1/8. So 1/8 of the planet is the amount of land where humans can live. Now, do we grow food in all of the places where people live? No. We have stores where you can go and get food, but we can't grow food in all of the places people live. Some places are too hot or too dry, too rocky, too steep. So there's some places where we can't grow food. We can only grow food on about a quarter of all of the land where people can live. So I'm going to cut up our piece of apple where people can live into 4 pieces, into 4 quarters. And so one of these quarters is all the land we have for growing food for everyone that lives on planet Earth. So what is 1/4 of 1/8? That's 1/32. So 1/32 of our entire planet is how much room we have to grow food for everyone who lives here. So this thin layer of the apple skin represents the topmost layer of our Earth's surface, and we call that topsoil. And topsoil, like our garden soil, is really nutrient rich and full of nutrients, water, and those living organisms like the microscopic organisms and the tiny invertebrates that we talked about last class that break down all of the dead and decaying matter, those decomposers, and they return all of the nutrients back to the topsoil. This nutrient-rich topsoil is what plants need to grow, whether it's our food crops in our farms and gardens, or the plants and trees that you find out in nature. Now, the layer of topsoil on the earth is no more than 5 feet deep. And that may seem like a lot, but it can take over 100 years for 1 inch of topsoil to form. So it's important for us to help protect that topsoil. I mentioned earlier that plants help protect the soil, and one way they do this is by helping prevent erosion. Erosion is the process of breaking down of rocks and minerals. Erosion is caused by weathering, which is the effect of wind and air temperature on rocks and soil, and by water, like rivers and rain and waves, breaking away and moving bits of rock and soil material. And we can see what that might look like on bare, open soil. If I pretend that I am the wind and I blow on the soil hill here, what do you think is going to happen? Let's see. Do you see how the wind moves some of the soil from the hill? Now, what do you think will happen if I pour water onto my soil hill like rain? Let's watch. We can see that the water moves some of the soil from the top of the hill to the bottom of the hill. And this water with sediment in it is called runoff. And as I pour more water, you can see that a river is starting to form and it's eating away into the soil. These are examples of erosion. And erosion isn't a bad thing if it happens over a long, long time. It's how our valleys and our canyons form as the wind and the water from the rivers slowly breaks away at the soil and the rocks. And it's how we get the minerals in our soil, like we talked about in our very first lesson. But when erosion happens really quickly, we can start to lose our topsoil. For example, if a big storm comes through and there's lots of flooding, or it brings big waves that wash away all the sand and soil on our shorelines, or the winds blow really hard on unprotected soil, then we start to lose some of that topsoil. Now, if we imagine this soil hill as an island, like the island of Maui, what is surrounding our island? The ocean. And so when all of the soil material, this nutrient-rich soil, gets washed away, eroded away, it ends up in our oceans. And the increase in nutrients and soil matter in the ocean can have a negative effect on the ocean ecosystem, especially our delicate coral reefs. But if we protect the soil, then it minimizes how much rock and soil is moved by erosion. And by doing this, we can protect both the land and the ocean. And one thing that can really help prevent erosion is plants. Remember how I said that plants help our soil stay in place? Well, the roots of plants grow deep down into the soil and spread out all throughout the soil and helps hold all of that soil together so it doesn't get washed away by water or blown away by the wind. So if there's a lot of plants growing in the soil, there's less erosion. It protects that soil. For example, the ocean waves are constantly washing away sand and rocks and soil off the beach. And as they erode away at that coastline, the plants there we can see are helping to hold that soil in place and prevent that soil from being washed out to sea. So we can help protect our topsoil from erosion by planting lots of plants and protecting places where there are a lot of plants growing. In Hawaii, there is a cool program called Re-Tree Hawaii that focuses on planting trees all over the island. And by planting trees, we are protecting the soil on our island, the topsoil, as well as protecting our oceans from that soil runoff. It also helps create shade that keeps our soil from drying out. Because remember, soil needs to have moisture in it and water for all of those living organisms that keep our soil healthy. Trees also provide habitat and homes for native animals and insects, and trees help our planet by absorbing extra carbon dioxide in the atmosphere that's contributing to climate change and releasing oxygen, which we need to breathe. Trees and other plants are so important to the soil, to us, and to the planet. On October 30th, Re-Tree Hawaii and people all over the Hawaiian Islands will be planting trees to help the environment. If you're interested, you and your ohana can learn more by visiting retreehawaii.org. The earth is our home, and we can help protect the land by protecting the soil and all the plants that grow there. So whether you're planting a tree or working in the garden or taking care of the grass in your yard, you are helping to protect that soil and to protect our land. Mahalo for joining me today, and aloha.